Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going way back in time to ancient Israel
Okay.
to explore these intricate genealogies you find in the first 27 chapters of First Chronicles.
All right.
Now, I know what you're thinking, genealogies.
Huh.
Long lists of hard-to-pronounce names.
Right.
But trust me, there's much more to these chapters than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. These genealogies are way more than just family trees. They're a window into the social, the political, and even the religious landscape of ancient Israel.
So we can glean insights into its history, into its power structures, and even the development of some of those important religious practices.
Just from these lists.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Chapter 1 kicks things off by taking us all the way back to Adam.
Right.
And we follow that lineage down to Abraham,
Okay.
encountering those familiar figures like Noah and his sons along the way. But it's the less familiar names
Yes.
that I find really intriguing.
Exactly. Like Nimrod, for instance, he's described as a mighty one in the earth,
Oh, yeah.
which suggests a powerful and influential figure.
Yeah.
And then there's Peleg.
Whose name literally means division. And his birth coincided with a pivotal moment in history,
Oh, wow.
the division of the earth. These little details offer fascinating glimpses into the ancient world.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle with each name, revealing a new piece of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And as we move into the lineage of Abraham, we encounter some familiar stories, but with fresh perspectives.
Yeah.
It's not just Isaac and Ishmael, but also the sons of Keturah.
Right.
This is a lesser-known branch of that family tree.
Right.
What is the significance of including these lesser-known descendants?
Well, it highlights the complexity of these ancient family lines. It challenges the notion that history is a straightforward linear narrative.
Okay.
And it reminds us that even within those familiar stories, there are often hidden depths waiting to be explored.
That's a great point. And as we delve deeper into chapter 2, the focus shifts to the line of Judah,
Okay.
which, as many of you know, leads to David and eventually Jesus.
Yes.
But before we get to those big names, there are some pretty captivating stories along the way. Yeah.
The story of and Onan and Tamar's deception and the eventual birth of Perez and Zerah, it's all a bit Shakespearean, wouldn't you say?
It certainly is. It highlights the drama and the intrigue that can exist even within genealogical records.
Yeah.
But these narratives aren't just for entertainment.
Right.
They reveal the importance of lineage and inheritance in ancient Israelite society.
Okay.
Tamar's actions, for example, though, considered unconventional,
Right.
demonstrate the lengths to which people would go to preserve their family line.
It makes you think about the weight of family legacy, doesn't it?
It does.
And then we follow the line through Hezron, Ram, Amminadab, and Nahshon, leading to that well-known story of Boaz and Ruth.
Yeah,
It's amazing how these seemingly distant figures are all interconnected.
right.
But what I find particularly interesting are those specific details woven into the narrative, like Caleb marrying Ephrath and their son Hur, being the father of Bezalel, the skilled craftsman of the tabernacle.
Those details add another layer of depth to these genealogies. They remind us that these weren't just abstract lineages, they were real people with skills, with professions, and with contributions to society.
Yes.
And the fact that Bezalel's lineage is traced back through these generations underscores the importance of craftsmanship and artistry, even in the context of religious practice.
And then in chapter 3, we get to King David.
Yes.
Now, most of us are familiar with David's story, his triumphs, his struggles, his complex personality. But seeing his family tree laid out like this really brings his humanity into focus.
It does indeed. The chapter highlights the intricacies of his family life with multiple wives and children, which, as you know, led to a fair amount of conflict and drama.
Yeah.
It also explores the succession of kings after Solomon, ultimately pointing to the kingdom's downfall.
Okay.
It's a reminder that even divinely chosen lineages are subject to the cyclical nature of power.
Absolutely. And then there's the mention of Jeconiah,
Yeah.
whose line, despite all the turmoil, leads to Zerubbabel, a central figure in the return from exile.
Yes.
It's like a thread of hope woven into a narrative of loss and upheaval. What's fascinating to me is that these genealogies aren't just about the big names in biblical history. Chapter 4 introduces us to some lesser-known individuals and their fascinating stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And one of those intriguing figures is Jabez, whose name sadly meant sorrow.
Oh, wow.
He actually prayed for God's blessing and protection. What's so powerful about this story is that God granted his request.
It makes you wonder if people back then saw a connection between a name and a person's destiny.
That's a great observation. Names held immense significance in the ancient world.
Right.
They often reflected a person's character or even their perceived destiny.
Okay.
Jabez's prayer suggests a belief that even a name associated with sorrow could be overcome through divine intervention.
So it's a story about hope and resilience, even when facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. And I think that resonates with people even today. I mean, haven't we all felt at times that our circumstances were dictating our future?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
The story of Jabez reminds us that we can appeal to a higher power for help,
Yeah.
and that our past doesn't have to define our future. It's a powerful message that transcends time and culture.
And chapter 4 doesn't stop there. It introduces us to the Kenites descendants of Rechab and the scribes living in Jabez.
Right.
It's like each verse adds a new layer of detail to this intricate tapestry of ancient Israel.
Indeed. And as we move into chapters 5 through 7, our scope expands beyond the tribe of Judah to explore the other tribes of Israel.
Right.
We encounter Reuben, Gad, Manasseh, and more. What's fascinating here is that each tribe has its own unique history,
Right.
its own set of triumphs and failures.
It reminds us that the nation of Israel was more than just a monolithic entity. It was a diverse tapestry of people,
Yes.
each with their own stories to tell. And even within those broader narratives, there are these incredible personal stories that just leap off the page.
Absolutely. Like the story of Zelophehad's daughters who challenged societal norms by demanding their right to inherit land. This wasn't just a family dispute. It was a pivotal moment in legal history.
Okay.
Their courage and determination set a precedent for women's rights within that context.
It's inspiring to see how individuals can challenge the status quo and pave the way for greater equality and justice. And then there's the tragic tale of Ephraim mourning the death of his sons.
Right.
That story, while heartbreaking, speaks to the universal experience of grief and loss. It reminds us that even amidst genealogies and historical accounts, there's a raw human element that connects us across millennia.
Exactly. And as we journey into chapter 8, we return to a specific tribe, Benjamin. Now, this tribe might ring a bell because it's the tribe from which King Saul originated.
Ah, yes. We can trace his lineage back through Kish and Ner.
Uh-huh.
It's fascinating to see how these pivotal figures in Israel's history fit into the larger genealogical puzzle. But what stands out to me are the details about the tribe's migration to Moab, the building of cities like Ono and Lod, and even their conflict with the inhabitants of Gath.
These details add context and depth to our understanding of the tribe's history. They're not just names on a page. They're a people with a rich and complex past,
Right.
shaped by migration, conflict, and cultural exchange.
And then chapter 9 takes a different turn. Instead of simply listing names, it emphasizes the importance of genealogies in the context of the return from exile.
Yes.
This was a pivotal moment for the Israelites, a time of immense change and rebuilding after a period of displacement and loss.
Right. It must have been a very disorienting experience.
So in that context, these genealogies weren't just about tracing ancestry, they were about reclaiming identity.
Right.
It was a way of saying, this is who we are, this is where we come from, and despite everything we've endured, we are still a people.
That's a powerful insight.
Yeah.
These genealogies served as a vital tool for reestablishing a sense of belonging and continuity.
Yeah.
They were a way of remembering their roots, their heritage, and what bound them together as a nation. And you see that specifically mentioned. The priests, the Levites, and temple servants returning to Jerusalem.
It's like they were rebuilding their society from the ground up, and those genealogies provided a blueprint for that reconstruction, both physically and spiritually.
Precisely. And that brings us to chapters 10 through 20, which focus on the reign of King David, a pivotal figure who shaped the course of Israel's history. Now, most of us are familiar with the highlights: his rise to power, his conquest of Jerusalem, his wars against various enemies.
But what's striking is how those accounts are interwoven with these smaller, more personal stories.
Yes.
Like David's longing for water from the well of Bethlehem and the 3 mighty men who risked their lives to fulfill his wish.
That story, while seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, reveals a lot about David's character.
Okay.
It speaks to his humanity, his vulnerability, and the deep loyalty he inspired in those who served him.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful leaders have basic human desires, and that true leadership often involves sacrifice and empathy.
And then there's a conflict with Hanun, the king of Ammon. What started as a diplomatic misunderstanding escalated into a full-blown war, reminding us how fragile peace can be and how easily good intentions can be misconstrued.
It's a story that unfortunately still resonates today as we see conflicts arise from miscommunication and mistrust. And of course, no discussion of King David would be complete without mentioning his sin in taking a census and the devastating consequences that followed.
Right.
Chapters 21 and 22 delve into this dark chapter in his life,
Yeah.
highlighting the plague that killed 70,000 men.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stark reminder that even those who are considered great are capable of making grave mistakes.
What's interesting is how the narrative doesn't shy away from David's flaws. It portrays him as a complex character,
Wow.
capable of both great good and terrible sin. And in that, we see a reflection of our own humanity.
Right. We're all flawed individuals
Oh.
capable of both good and bad. But what's crucial is how we respond to our mistakes. And in David's case, we see deep remorse and a genuine desire to make amends. He wants to build a temple for the Lord.
Yes.
But God, through the prophet Nathan, tells him that his son Solomon will be the one to carry out this task.
That's a significant moment. It highlights the concept of divine timing and God's sovereignty.
Right.
Even though David's heart was in the right place, God had a different plan, a plan that would unfold in its own time.
And while David is prevented from building the temple himself, we see him preparing diligently for the task,
Yeah.
gathering materials and making arrangements.
It shows his commitment to honoring God and his willingness to submit to a higher plan, even when it wasn't what he initially desired. And in those final chapters, 23 through 27,
Right.
we see the culmination of David's preparations. He meticulously organizes the Levites for service in the temple, outlining their various roles and responsibilities.
It's amazing to see the level of detail that went into organizing the temple and its functions. The Levites weren't just assigned random tasks. They were given specific roles based on their skills and abilities.
Exactly. We see them tasked with everything from managing the temple's resources and even maintaining its physical structure to officiating those religious ceremonies and upholding the law. It was a massive undertaking
Right.
that required a high level of organization and coordination.
It wasn't just about the priests.
Yeah.
Right? There were so many other roles. Musicians, gatekeepers, scribes,
Yeah.
all contributing to the smooth functioning of the temple and, by extension, the nation.
Right.
What I find particularly interesting is the emphasis placed on music.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that it wasn't just entertainment. It was an integral part of worship.
Absolutely. Music was a powerful form of expression, a way to connect with the divine and to elevate the hearts and minds of the people.
Right.
David, a musician himself, understood this deeply, and his careful selection and organization of those musical guilds demonstrate the high value he placed on this aspect of worship.
It's a reminder that faith isn't just about rituals and doctrines. It's about experiencing the presence of God in a tangible way. And music clearly played a key role in facilitating that experience.
Right.
And then there's that intriguing detail about David's final instructions to the Levites,
Okay.
that they no longer need to carry the tabernacle. This might seem like a minor point, but it actually marks a profound shift in Israelite religious practice.
I see what you mean. It's like they were transitioning from a nomadic, wilderness-based faith to a more settled,
Yeah.
permanent form of worship centered around the temple in Jerusalem.
Precisely.
Uh-huh.
The tabernacle, a portable sanctuary, had been the focal point of their worship during those years of wandering. But with the establishment of the temple, a permanent structure in the heart of their capital city, their faith took on a new dimension. It signified stability, permanence, and a deepening relationship with God.
Right.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've journeyed through centuries of history, encountered some really fascinating figures, and explored the intricate world of ancient genealogies.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible to think how these seemingly simple lists of names have taken us on such a rich and multifaceted journey.
It just goes to show that even the most seemingly dry or obscure texts can reveal profound truths about humanity, about faith, and about the human experience. These genealogies remind us that we are all connected not just to our ancestors, but to a larger narrative that transcends time and place.
I think what really stood out to me was how these genealogies weren't just about bloodlines and ancestry. They were about stories.
Yeah.
Stories of individuals, families, and entire nations grappling with the challenges and the triumphs of life.
That's so true. And within those stories, we find echoes of our own experiences, our own struggles with faith, identity loss, and even the search for meaning.
So as we conclude this deep dive, I'd like to leave you with this question. What resonated with you most in this exploration of 1 Chronicles? Was it a particular story, a character, or a theme that sparked your curiosity?
These ancient genealogies, while rooted in a specific time and place, offer timeless insights into the human condition. As you reflect on the lives and the stories we've encountered, consider how they might inform your understanding of your own place in the grand tapestry of human existence.